My name is Emma, and I am 39 years old. I am standing in the middle of my parents' living room, still holding the gift I brought for my father's retirement. My sister Rachel is leaning against the fireplace, arms crossed, with that same smirk she always wears when she thinks she has won. "You should be grateful," she says. "We let you live your little tech fantasy while we handled the real family business. You owe us." I look around the room. My mother is silent, avoiding my eyes. My father looks disappointed, not in Rachel, but in me. They had just informed me that the small property I bought years ago, the one I renovated with my own money and vision, had been sold behind my back. Because it was still in my father's name. A family decision, they said, but they did not know I had prepared for this moment. They did not know my company had just gone public. They did not know who I had become. Before I tell you how everything changed, tell me where you are listening from. And if you have ever felt underestimated, stay with me. This story is for you. My name is Emma Grace Thompson. I was born and raised in a quiet suburban town outside of Portland. I have always been the kind of person who kept her head down, followed the rules, and did not ask for much. From the time I was young, I was the one who helped clean the dishes without being asked. I was the one who remembered birthdays, handled family paperwork, and made sure everyone else was okay, even when I was not. In my family, being good meant being silent. Being good meant making yourself small so that others could shine brighter. And in our house, no one shined brighter than my older sister Rachel. Rachel was the star, the firstborn. The one who went to law school, graduated with honors, and married a man who wore tailored suits and always smelled like expensive cologne. My parents were so proud of her that they practically floated when they talked about her. At every holiday dinner, her stories were met with wide eyes and applause. And then Rachel won the case in front of the entire courtroom. Can you believe that? Rachel just closed on a new home in the city, 3 floors, and her firm paid for the move. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one. The one who tinkered with computers. I studied software engineering in college, and when I told my parents, my father raised an eyebrow and said, "So, you want to work in tech support?" I tried to explain that it was not tech support. I was learning to build platforms, applications, scalable systems. I had dreams of creating something that could help people, something that could grow, but my words fell flat. They did not understand what I was doing, so they dismissed it. To them, coding looked like nonsense on a screen. They never saw the hours I spent learning new languages, the nights I stayed up debugging lines of code that refused to work. They never asked what I was building. They never once said they were proud. Instead, they told everyone I did something with computers. At first, it did not bother me. I told myself that one day they would see. One day they would understand what I was working toward. So I kept going. I taught myself new frameworks. I worked at startups, always behind the scenes, always taking the lower paying but more flexible job so I could build my own product on the side. I said no to big salaries and yes to ownership, to vision, to potential. But in the eyes of my family, Rachel was the one who made sacrifices. Rachel was the one who worked hard. I was just playing with machines. There was one night I remember clearly. I was home for Thanksgiving. Rachel had just told everyone she was flying to London for a case review and her firm was putting her in a suite at the Savoy. My father raised a glass and toasted to our brilliant daughter. My mother beamed. Then my mother turned to me and said, "Emma, honey, what is it that you do again? Still the same little thing?" I smiled because what else could I do? I said, "Yes, still building." Rachel rolled her eyes.
It has
"Been years, Emma. Maybe it is time to get a real job." Everyone laughed. And I sat there holding my fork, wishing I could disappear into the mashed potatoes. But here is what they never knew. Behind the quiet, behind the politeness, behind the soft smile and the low voice, I was building something real. I was creating a platform that was growing, slowly but steadily. I had users, I had traction. I had silent investors. And I had grit, the kind you do not need to announce, because it is written in every line of code you write at 2 a.m. while the world sleeps. Still, I never told them. I did not want to be the one boasting at the dinner table. I wanted my work to speak for itself. I moved out of the city and bought a small fixer-upper on the edge of town. It was nothing special on the outside, just a modest 2-bedroom with a yard and a leaking roof. But to me, it was freedom. I renovated it room by room with my own savings. I worked from the attic, surrounded by coffee mugs and whiteboards full of diagrams. I did not take vacations. I did not go out drinking. I invested every spare dollar into my project, into myself. Sometimes when I spoke to friends and told them I had gone 3 months without a proper weekend, they would ask me why I did not slow down. But they did not know what it felt like to sit in a room full of people who believed you were less. They did not know what it was like to be the daughter who was always good, always present, always dependable, but never enough. I did not want praise. I wanted peace. I wanted freedom. I wanted to wake up one day and know that I had built something no one could take from me. So I stayed quiet. I let Rachel shine. I let my parents believe what they wanted. I played the role they gave me, the good daughter, the reliable one, the one who does not cause trouble. But even the quiet ones have limits. And mine was coming? I did not know it yet, but everything was about to change. Some people are born into families that lift them up. I was born into one that needed someone to hold the weight so everyone else could soar. I was always that person. My earliest memories are not of play or joy, but of being useful. When I was 9, Rachel had a piano recital. She was wearing a white dress with little pearls sewn along the waist. My mother was fussing over her hair, and my father was shining his shoes. No one noticed that I had a fever. I remember standing by the door, swaying from dizziness, holding Rachel's sheet music because she had forgotten it. I had to remind her to take it before we left. My mother turned to me just once to say, "Emma, for heaven's sake, stop looking sick. This is your sister's big night." I said nothing. I held the music and smiled for the photos. That was how it always was. At Christmas, my presents were practical. Pajamas, socks, a calculator. Rachel got perfumes, jewelry, gift cards to high-end boutiques. My parents would say, "You are the sensible one, Emma. We know you will appreciate these." Appreciate what? Being invisible? When I graduated college with honors in computer science, there was no party, no dinner. Just a short phone call from my mother saying, "That is nice, dear. Did Rachel tell you about the promotion she got?" Yes. She had. Rachel always told me about her promotions, and her office renovations, and her firm's travel perks, and the house they bought in the gated community. Once, when Rachel and I were both home for the 4th of July, we went out to get ice cream. I tried to tell her about the platform I was developing. I was excited it had finally started gaining daily active users, and I had landed a small angel investment from someone I deeply admired. But as I spoke, Rachel kept looking at her phone. Then she said, "So, like, an app? Everyone has an app now." I nodded. It is not just an app. It is a data integration tool for small business backends. It helps streamline reporting and reduces manual processing. She cut me off. "Okay, but does it make money?" I tried to explain our freemium model, the upsell potential, the contracts we were negotiating. She just sipped her coffee and sighed. Sounds cute. That word cute burned into me. It was not just her. It was everyone in my family. My father once told me during a Sunday lunch, "It is good to have a hobby, Emma. I am glad you are keeping yourself busy." Keeping myself busy? I had just spent 6 months building a new back-end system from scratch while managing a 5-person freelance team. But to them, it was playtime. A child in front of a screen. There was the family barbecue where my uncle asked if I could help fix his printer. I said I did not do hardware repairs. He waved me off. "You do computers, right? Same thing." At that same barbecue, Rachel announced she was being considered for partner. My father actually teared up. My mother hugged her like she had won the Nobel Prize. No one asked me what I was working on. No one ever did. The hardest part was not the lack of celebration. It was the silence. The assumption that I would not be doing anything worth talking about. The way conversations would float. right past me like I was furniture. I remember a Thanksgiving dinner maybe 5 years ago. My cousin Sarah had just gotten engaged. Rachel was talking about her firm's international division. My parents were laughing and refilling wine glasses. I said softly, I am thinking of pitching to a venture capital firm. My mother smiled. Distractedly, oh, that sounds interesting. Rachel, did you tell them about your client in Paris? And just like that, my voice disappeared again. I learned to shrink myself. I learned not to interrupt. I learned to clap for everyone else, even when my hands felt numb. I told myself it did not matter, that I would build in silence, that the reward would come later, but no matter how much I accomplished, it was never enough to be seen. I once tried to bring home a brochure from a conference where I had spoken. I had given a presentation on a PI integration for enterprise clients. It was the biggest stage I had ever stood on. I thought my father might be proud. He glanced at the photo on the cover. This looks like one of those online seminars. Are these real companies? Yes, Dad. Real companies. Companies now worth millions. Companies who came to me for advice, but to him, I was still the little girl holding Rachel's music. The worst memory came 2 years ago. My mother had surgery. I took 2 weeks off to stay at the hospital, to organize her medications, to make sure she had rides and someone to cook for her. I slept on a folding chair most nights, answering work emails from the corridor. Rachel visited. Twice. Each time, she brought flowers and took photos. When our mother recovered, she told me, I do not know what I would have done without Rachel. She is always so thoughtful. I felt something crack in me that day, but I smiled because that was my role. The one who does not complain, the good daughter. The invisible strength behind everyone else's success, and still they wondered why. I stayed distant. They never knew what they were doing. They never saw how their words carved into me like glass, but I remembered everything. While my family looked down on me and my so-called hobby, I was quietly building a life that belonged only to me. It started with late nights, not because I was a night owl, but because that was the only time the world grew quiet enough for me to focus. I would finish contract work by day, and by night, I would breathe life into my dream. It began as a simple problem I wanted to solve. I noticed that many small businesses struggled to make sense of their own data. They had sales reports in one place, customer feedback in another, and supply orders stored somewhere else entirely. I thought, what if I could create a tool that brought all of that together in one clean dashboard? That idea became Syncleap, a platform that helped small businesses track, visualize, and act on their most important metrics. I built the first version alone. I designed the interface, wrote the code, tested it, broke it, and fixed it again. It was clunky at first. Nothing elegant. But it worked. By the end of the first year, I had 10 small businesses using it, then 20, then 50. One of them, a small organic grocery chain, sent me a message that said, "This saved us hours every week. You are a genius." No one had ever called me that before. I reinvested every dollar I earned into making the platform better. I hired a freelance UI designer from Berlin, a back-end specialist from Toronto, and a data analyst from Austin. We worked remotely. We shared screens. We built something that felt like magic, while Rachel was flying business class to attend depositions. I was writing grant applications, pitching to local business competitions, and signing pilot deals. I ate pasta 4 nights a week. I stopped shopping for anything beyond the essentials. Every spare coin went into Syncleap. Still, I never told my family. They had made their opinion clear years ago. What I did was small, unserious, temporary. So I kept it to myself. I used my savings to buy a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. It was not impressive on the outside, which I preferred. It gave me privacy. It let me keep building in peace. I set up my home office in the attic, surrounded by whiteboards, sticky notes, and stacks of printed feedback from users. The attic was hot in the summer and cold in the winter. The window leaked during heavy rain. But it was mine. I had full ownership of the company. Every decision came through me. Every feature, every update, every customer success story bore my name, whether they knew it or not. and when I finally brought on investors, I did so on my terms. One of them was a woman named Julia Morgan, a former tech executive who had built and sold 2 companies of her own. She found SyncLeap through a business accelerator I applied to on a whim. We had coffee after my pitch. She looked me in the eye and said, "You know this could scale fast, right? This is not just useful, it is necessary." That moment changed everything. Julia introduced me to people I never dreamed I would meet. She helped me restructure the backend for better scalability. She connected me to a CTO coach and guided me through the legal maze of incorporation and IP protection. Under her mentorship, I cleaned up the code base, strengthened the infrastructure, and prepared for growth. Within months, I had contracts from 3 regional business associations and inquiries from major firms. Then the opportunity came. A competitor wanted to license part of our technology, but Julia urged me to think bigger. She said, "Emma, what you have built is not just a feature. It is a company. You could go public with this. You just need the right moment." So I waited. I kept building. And while I waited, I started documenting everything I had ever done for my family. Every wire transfer to help pay off Rachel's tuition during her law school years. Every check I wrote to cover car repairs when my parents' vehicle broke down. Every grocery haul I paid for when my mother said money was tight. I wrote it all down. I gathered receipts, emails, bank statements. Not because I wanted to shame them, but because I needed proof that I had been more than the quiet daughter who played with computers. I had been the one keeping the lights on, silently. My parents never asked where the money came from. They assumed I was just doing fine. They never once imagined that the same girl who fixed their Wi-Fi and helped them with online forms was quietly preparing to list her company on the stock exchange. They had no idea that I had hired a legal team, that I had a financial advisor, that I had opened trusts, created protective clauses, and moved most of my assets into shielded accounts. I had prepared for everything except the moment when they would try to take it from me. Because that moment would come, and when it did, I would be ready. They thought I was small, but they had no idea what I had built. The invitation came in the mail, printed on thick, ivory-colored cardstock with gold-embossed letters. At first glance, it looked like a wedding announcement, but it was not a wedding. It was a retirement party for my father. Join us in celebrating Richard Thompson's remarkable 40-year career in business law, it read. Hosted by Rachel and family. There was no mention of me. Still, I was expected to attend. A phone call followed the next day. My mother's voice was chipper, as if she had rehearsed her tone. "Emma, you received the invitation, yes? It will be held at the club downtown. Rachel is handling the arrangements, but of course we want the whole family there. Your father will be so pleased." I could hear the clicking of her nails on the kitchen counter as she spoke. She always did that when she was trying to sound casual. I swallowed my pride and agreed to come. What choice did I have? If I said no, I would be the difficult one, the ungrateful one, the distant daughter who never shows up. So I said yes.
And
then spent the next 3 weeks preparing, not for the party, but for the emotional armor I would need to survive it. I had not been to a formal family gathering in over a year. I kept my distance. Ever since my mother's surgery, when Rachel was praised for her 2 brief visits while I had stayed and cared for her day and night, I knew I needed space. But this time, I had to be there. My father was retiring. This was a major event, and I would not let Rachel claim another moment of glory unchallenged. I bought a new dress. Simple but elegant. I had my hair done, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I wanted to feel composed, in control. I knew what I was walking into. The week leading up to the party was filled with tension. Rachel sent a group message me, her, and our parents outlining the plan for the evening. She listed the guest list, menu, seating chart, and dress code. She did not ask for my input. She simply said, "Emma, please be on time. You can help greet people at the entrance." Greet people? I was not a co-host. I was an accessory. A coat. Rack with a smile, but I replied, "Of course. I will be there." I had learned how to choose my battles. What they did not know was that, just days earlier. I had been in a meeting with my legal team finalizing the next phase of the business. Syncleap was being fast-tracked toward a direct public listing. Julia had helped secure key partnerships that had tripled our revenue in 6 months. Our valuation was climbing faster than we anticipated. The same day I received Rachel's message about greeting guests. I had signed a term sheet with one of the largest analytics firms in the country. A licensing deal worth 7 figures, but I said nothing. I would not walk into that party bragging. I would not give them a reason to say I had changed. The day of the party arrived, gray and rainy. I stood in front of the mirror before leaving and whispered to myself, "You are not small. You do not need their approval." I arrived early, as instructed. Rachel was already there, overseeing the final setup. She wore a designer pantsuit and gold earrings. She looked polished and powerful. She saw me and gave me a quick nod, glad. "You made it. The coat check is just over there. People should start arriving soon. Try to keep the entrance flowing." I bit my tongue and smiled. Yes, of course. The guests began to trickle in. Former colleagues of my father, neighbors, extended family members. Everyone was dressed to impress. The room glowed with soft lighting, and a string quartet played. Near the fireplace, waiters moved through the crowd with silver trays of champagne. My father entered, and everyone applauded. He looked proud. He wore a dark blue suit and accepted hugs and handshakes with practiced ease. He was in his element. Rachel stayed close by, introducing him to guests as if she were his campaign manager. I stayed near the entrance. Just as asked. Not one person thanked me for helping. Not one person asked what I had been working on. When dinner was served, I found my seat at the far end of the long table, near the children and distant relatives. Rachel sat at the head, next to our parents. I was not part of the inner circle. During the meal, Rachel stood and made a toast to my father, the man, who taught me everything about strength, negotiation, and loyalty. "You are my hero," everyone clapped. My father teared up. Then Rachel added, "And thank you to everyone who helped organize this night, especially those who handled the small details." She looked at me when she said it. A quick glance. A smile. That was all teeth. The room turned to see me. Some clapped politely. Small details. That was what I was to her. After dinner, people began sharing stories. Laughter echoed through the room. My parents floated from table to table, soaking in praise. Rachel introduced old family friends to her husband, boasting about their vacations and career milestones. No one asked me anything. I stood by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass, and reminded myself that this would be the last time I stood in the shadows because I had a secret, and it was growing. And when the time came, they would not be able to ignore me anymore, not because I wanted revenge, but because I had finally outgrown the small box they built for me. And soon, I would break it open. It happened 3 weeks after the retirement party. I was at home, curled up on the living room couch, reviewing feedback from a new batch of beta testers. A candle flickered on the windowsill. The house was quiet. My kind of quiet, the kind filled with purpose and focus. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. "You might want to check your email." Something urgent came through. My stomach tightened. Rachel never sent messages like that. No pleasantries, no explanation. Just a vague warning. I opened my laptop immediately and logged in. There it was. A notification from the county registry. Transfer of property completed. The subject line alone made my heart sink. I clicked it, thinking there must be some mistake. I had not authorized any transfer. I had not sold anything. Then I saw it. The deed to my house, the one I bought and renovated with my own savings, had been signed over. The new listed owner was R&T Holdings, Rachel and Thomas, her husband. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I checked the document 3 times. The signature box said, "Authorized by Richard Thompson, my father." The house was still technically in his name. Years ago, when I first bought it, my credit was thin, and I had used his name as a co-signer. I had meant to update it once. Things stabilized. But then things moved fast with Syncleap, and I kept pushing it aside, promising myself I would do it next quarter. Now it was too late. I could not breathe. I felt like I was underwater. I called my father. He picked up on the third ring, sounding tired. Emma, I was wondering when you would find out. Find out what? I asked, my voice shaking. That you stole my house. There was a long pause. Then he sighed. We did what needed to be done. Rachel explained everything. The house was in my name legally. You have done well for yourself, and your sister's firm needed a quiet property to set up a remote office. This made sense. I could not believe what I was hearing. You just gave it away without telling me? I did not give it away, he replied, sounding defensive now. We transferred ownership. Rachel's firm made a donation in your name to a foundation. You were compensated in spirit. In spirit? I whispered. I lived there. That was my home. I paid for every nail, every repair, every upgrade. You never asked to put it in your own name, he said, as if that justified everything. We assumed it did not matter to you. I hung up before I could say something I would regret. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. My heart pounded in my ears. I could not understand how it had come to this. But it was not over, not yet. An hour later, Rachel called. I almost did not pick up, but I needed to hear her voice. I needed to know how she could possibly justify this. Emma, she said, calm and professional, like she was negotiating. A contract. I know this looks bad, but the property was under Dad's name. And legally, he had the right to transfer it. My firm is going to use it temporarily. We might even renovate it further. It will be good for the neighborhood. You stole it. No one stole anything. You live in a world of code and ideals, but this is how business works. I clenched. The phone tighter. You had no right, I said. Actually, she replied coldly, we had every right. You should be thanking us. You did not even live there full-time anymore. You spent more time in hotels and co-working spaces than that old attic. I felt the tears welling up, but I would not let her hear them. Why now? I asked. Why? Do this now? She hesitated. Because you are getting attention. People are starting to talk about SyncLeap. Dad said you are being reckless. He wanted to protect your assets before you made a mistake. So that was it. They saw me rising and they panicked. I was no longer the little sister who quietly handed out sheet music and paid for groceries. I had become something they could not understand. And rather than ask, rather than support, they tried to control, to take, and they thought I would let them. They truly believed I would just accept this, as I had accepted everything else. But they were wrong. I was not the same Emma they grew up with. They had taken the last thing I had kept just for myself, my sanctuary, my proof that I could build something lasting, and now they had declared war. I closed my laptop. I stood up, and I made a decision. I would not cry. I would not beg. I would act. Because they had just made a very expensive mistake. And soon they would understand exactly who I had become. The next morning I received an email from Rachel's assistant. It was brief and cold like most of her communications. Subject: Office Transition Body. As per the agreement, we will begin minor renovations to the property next week. Please ensure all remaining personal items are removed by Friday. Contact us if you require assistance coordinating movers. No greeting, no signature. Just a command, delivered like I was a tenant being evicted from a place I had never owned. I stared at the message for a long time. My home, my sanctuary, was being claimed as if it were a vacant lot. No apology, no conversation. Just a corporate takeover, spearheaded by the same people who had once smiled over birthday cakes and Sunday brunch. It was the silence that made it worse. My parents said nothing, not a call, not a message. Not even a word to ask if I was all right. So I called. I needed answers. My mother picked up on the second ring. Her voice was light, cheerful even. Emma, darling. I was just thinking of you. Were you? I asked. She hesitated. I heard from Rachel that the office transition is moving along. I took a breath. Office transition? I said slowly. Is that what we are calling it now? Sweetheart, she began, her tone shifting to that patronizing softness I had known all my life. I know this is a bit of a shock, but you need to look at the bigger picture. Rachel's firm is expanding. This will help the family in the long run. I nearly laughed. How does stealing my home help the family? Oh, Emma, she sighed, as if I were being childish. You always make things so personal. You know, your sister has done so much for this family. She works non-stop. She has sacrificed vacations, holidays, and I have not. I cut in. I took care of you during your surgery. I paid off the last of Rachel's student loans. I have been sending money to this family for years. There was a pause. Then, in the calmest voice I had ever heard from her, my mother said, "And we are grateful. But you are doing well now. You can afford to let this go." That sentence rang in my ears. You can afford to let this go. I realized then that, to them, I was not a daughter. I was a bank account, a fallback plan, a resource to be managed and moved around like a piece on a chessboard. You do not get it, I said quietly. You do not get it, Emma, she replied, her voice sharpening. You chose this independent path. You never wanted to be part of the family business, the traditions, the legacy your father built. You chose computers over people. I felt heat rise in my chest. I chose integrity, I said. I chose peace. I chose not to become someone who takes what does not belong to them. Emma, she said, as if disappointed, this is what families do. We share, we support each other. You owe us that. There it was. You owe us. I had always known they believed it. But hearing it spoken aloud shattered something in me. Years of silent sacrifice. Years of carrying their burdens while being told my work was just a phase. Years of being treated like a background character in my own life, all because they believed I owed them. I hung up, not out of rage, but because I finally understood. There was no reasoning with people who saw love as leverage. That same afternoon, Rachel showed up at my co-working space. She walked in confidently, like she belonged there, wearing a charcoal gray blazer and a smug expression. She looked around at the open layout, the quiet hum of collaboration, the walls lined with whiteboards and ideas. So this is where the magic happens? She said, pulling out a chair across from me. I said nothing. I came to offer a solution, she continued. We are willing to pay you a nominal fee for the renovations you put into the house. We will call it a goodwill gesture. A goodwill gesture? I repeated. She smiled. Emma, you need to let go of this martyr complex. The house was never yours. You should have transferred the deed, but you did not. That is on you. I stared at her. The renovations, the labor, the investment, I did all of that, I said. You contributed nothing. She leaned in. Do not make this ugly, she said softly. You are doing well, right? Stock options, funding rounds, articles in business magazines. What do you need a little house for anyway? You have already won. I narrowed my eyes. That house was never about the money. It was mine. And you? Stole it because you cannot stand that I did something without you. Her expression hardened. You think you are better than us now, she said. But let me remind you, without Dad's name, you would never have qualified for that mortgage. Without this family, you would not be where you are. You think I owe you my success? I asked. I think, she said coldly, you should remember where you came from. I stood up. So should you. She laughed as she left. You are lucky, Emma. Some of us were born to lead. Some just follow. But I was not following anymore. I was done being small. I had tried for years to earn their respect. Now I was ready to earn their silence. And I knew exactly how. I always imagined that when I reached my breaking point, it would be loud, screaming, tears, a scene. But when it happened, it was quiet. I was standing in my kitchen, holding a mug of tea that had gone cold in my hands. Outside the window, the last of the afternoon light flickered across the branches. The wind moved gently through the trees, rustling the dry leaves. It was peaceful, too peaceful for how I felt inside. Something had shifted in me, and I could feel it in my bones. For years, I had swallowed every insult, every dismissive comment, every moment of being overlooked. I had rationalized it all. They were family. They did not mean to hurt me. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe if I worked harder, they would finally see me. But standing there in my kitchen, days after they took my house and told me I owed them, I saw the truth. So clearly it nearly knocked the air out of my lungs. They never wanted to understand me. They wanted to control me. They saw my silence not as grace, but as weakness. My generosity was mistaken for obligation. My independence made me a threat, not a daughter, and I had allowed it. I had allowed them to walk over me for so long that I forgot how it felt to stand tall, but not anymore. That quiet moment, that breath between rage and resolve was the snap. Not the kind that breaks you, the kind that wakes you up. I put the mug down. I walked into my office and shut the door behind me. This was no longer about the house. This was about the years of manipulation. The quiet expectation that I would always be there, always give, always disappear when it was convenient. This was about finally ending a cycle that had defined my entire life. I pulled out a notebook. Not a digital file, not an app, just paper and pen, and I wrote one word at the top of the page. Enough. Underneath it, I began a list. A list of everything I had done for them financially, emotionally, practically. Every wire transfer, every loan. Every holiday gift that went unnoticed. Every emergency I helped resolve. Then I started a second list. This one was titled, Next Steps. I did not just want to walk away. I wanted to draw a line so clear they would never cross it again. First, I called Julia. She answered immediately. As she always did. Emma, what is going on? They took the house, I said. They transferred it without my consent. It was legal, technically, but it was theft. Her voice was calm, steady. Do you want to fight it? I hesitated. No, not the house. I want to fight the idea that they can take anything else. She paused. Then we will protect everything else. Over the next 2 hours, we reviewed every asset I owned, my equity in SyncLeap, my intellectual property, my financial accounts, even my emergency reserves. Julia brought in her legal team. They were surgical, efficient, emotionless. Exactly what I needed. We moved my remaining personal assets into a holding trust. We locked down my business shares with a clause preventing any transfer without unanimous board approval. We created firewalls around my IP legal, digital, and personal. I changed all passwords. Revoked every shared access point. Scrubbed metadata from documents. Anything they could try to twist or claim. I erased. Then I went further. I drafted formal letters cutting all financial ties. No more support. No more quiet payments. No more family emergencies solved with my savings. They would feel it, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. I was not a safety net. I was not a backup plan. I was not a charity. I was done. After the legal work, I turned to my personal space. I packed what remained at the house Rachel had taken. There was not much, just a few boxes of books. Some furniture I had built with my own hands, old journals, and a few framed photos I had not looked at in years. I rented a storage unit. I kept only what mattered. I found a new apartment, a modern, quiet place near a lake. Clean lines. Open windows. A home without history. I decorated it with intention. No more hand-me-downs. No more pieces of the past. Just peace. When I was done moving in, I sat down on the floor of my new living room. No furniture yet. Just sunlight pouring in through the windows. I felt something I had not felt in years. Stillness. The stillness of being ignored. The stillness of being safe. The next day, I received another email from Rachel. Subject: clarification on house transition. Body: Emma. Please be advised that our team found several of your items still on the property. If they are not removed by Monday, we will consider them abandoned. Also, please remember that Dad acted within his rights. Let us all move forward peacefully. I stared at the message and smiled. Then I replied, thank you for the reminder. I have completed all necessary arrangements. Please do not contact me again. Future communication may be directed through my attorney. 2 sentences. No emotion. No invitation, just a door closing. I did not send it to hurt her. I sent it to set myself free. Because here's the thing about snapping. It does not always sound like glass breaking or voices raised. Sometimes it is a whisper in the quiet that says, no. More. No more shrinking. No more explaining. No more waiting to be seen. I was done waiting. They thought I would crumble. but I had finally, completely, and fully stood up. I always believed that the opposite of chaos was stillness. But I was wrong. The true opposite of chaos is clarity. And now, I had never been more clear. In the days after I shut the door on my family, I operated with a kind of focus I had never felt before. It was not about revenge. It was not about proving anything. It was about protecting what I had built and making sure no one, not even my own blood, could ever take it from me again. First, I finalized everything with my lawyer, Gregory Lane.
He was sharp, calm, and fiercely detail-oriented.
We had worked together when SyncLeap first gained attention from venture capital firms. Now, I called him into action with a much more personal mission. I met him in his office, glass walls, dark. Wood shelves, no photos of family. Just contracts and legal briefs. That was what I needed. No emotion, just law. I want full insulation, I told him. He nodded. Already drafted. Here's what we will do. Over the next hour, we outlined a 5-point plan. It was surgical, precise, and legally airtight. 1. Financial firewall. All of my financial accounts were shifted into new private institutions under LLCs. I cut off every shared account. Even the small ones, no more birthday funds, no more emergency wires. I closed the joint savings account I had quietly opened to help cover my parents' medical bills. I transferred the remaining balance, $42.17, into my private account. I felt nothing as I clicked confirm. 2. No contact clause. Gregory drafted formal letters, informing my family that any further attempts to interfere with my property, business, or personal life would be considered harassment. If they reached out again for money, access, or favors, they would be met with legal consequences. The language was respectful, but clear. These were boundaries written in 3. IP and business lockdown. I had already moved all intellectual property into a protective trust, but now we added another layer. Any future licensing, profit sharing, or publishing agreements would include clauses preventing family involvement without unanimous board approval. Julia helped me review everything again. She was proud. You are protecting your future, she said. This is leadership. 4. Reputation management. I hired a private PR advisor not to launch a campaign, but to prepare one. Just in case. She drafted a quiet statement defending SyncLeap's independence and addressing any potential false claims from family members. We kept it in the vault. I prayed I would never need it. 5. Housing resolution. I let the house go. Legally, they had. The deed had been transferred by the co-owner. But emotionally, I had already left. Instead of fighting over the past, I invested in a future that was completely mine. I purchased a new property under a trust name, a small modern home with large windows and tall trees. It had nothing to do with status and everything to do with serenity. I did not announce it, I just moved in, while Gregory handled the legal boundaries. I worked on the emotional ones. I changed my number. I blocked them all. Rachel, my parents, Thomas, from every device, email, and app. I removed them from my emergency contacts. It was like shutting windows before a storm. Not out of fear, but out of peace. Then I wrote one final letter. It was not angry. It was not bitter. It was the truth. To my family. You taught me to believe that love was something you earned through usefulness. That silence was strength. That my value was in what I could give. I believed it for too long. I stayed quiet when you belittled my work. I gave when you did not ask and gave even more when you did. I believed that if I kept showing up one day, you would see me, but you never did, and I no longer need you to. You took my home because you believed I would not fight. And in doing so, you reminded me of something I had forgotten. I do not need to be part of a family that does not treat me as a person. So, here is what I want you to know. I do not owe you, not for the roof you gave me when I was a child. Not for the silence I endured to keep peace. Not for the love I offered without condition. You do not know me, but you will now know my absence. There will be no more quiet rescues. No more financial lifelines. No more sitting in the shadows while you toast to yourselves. I wish you well, but I wish myself better. Emma, I signed it and left it unsent. Some messages are not for them. They are for you. When all the paperwork was filed and the locks changed, and the new keys placed in my hand, I took a walk along the lakeside trail behind my new home. The sun was setting, casting gold over the water. Ducks drifted lazily through the reeds. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt still. No one knew where I was. No one expected anything from me. I was alone, but I was not lonely. That is the part they will never understand. When you finally take decisive action, not out of rage, but out of truth, you do not feel victorious. You feel free, and I was finally free. After I sent the letter and put all the legal protections in place, I expected things to settle down. I thought the walls I built would keep the storms outside. But what happened next surprised me. It was like a ripple turning into a wave. And the wave hit hard. Almost immediately, the phone started ringing relentlessly. At first I ignored it, but the calls came from every number I had ever known. My mother's voice on one line, Rachel's on another. Even Dad's number showed up twice. When I did not pick up, they left messages. Voices full of anger, confusion, and worst of all, entitlement. "Emma, please. We need to talk," my mother said on one voicemail. Her voice cracked, but the words still felt like demands. "Why are you doing this?" "You owe us," Rachel's message said sharply. "This is family, Emma. We are hurting." I did not respond. Text messages followed. At first, polite requests. "Let us explain." Then, desperation. "Please do not shut us out." Finally, accusations. Cold, selfish, ungrateful. But I stayed silent. I let the messages pile up. Instead of replying, I leaned into the calm I had fought so hard to find. One morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I know where you are. This is not over." The message chilled me, but I did not panic. I called the police and filed a report. I shared the details with Gregory, who advised me to increase my personal security. I installed cameras, changed locks again, and informed my neighbors to watch for any suspicious activity. Meanwhile, Rachel's calls turned more manipulative. "Emma," she said during a voicemail, "we could have helped you. You chose this path alone, but now you will lose everything. Syncleap will crumble without family support." Her words were meant to intimidate, but they only strengthened my resolve. The media caught wind of the family dispute, and rumors started to swirl. I was careful to keep public statements minimal, sticking to the prepared responses Julia had advised. I refused to be pulled into drama that could harm the business or my own well-being. At work, some employees noticed the tension. They asked if I was okay. I told them, "I am focused. That is all that matters." Friends who knew the whole story reached out with messages of support. "You are not alone," one said. "You deserve respect and peace," said another. Those words reminded me why I had fought so hard. The most surprising consequence, however, was the reaction from my parents. They stopped calling altogether. The angry messages ceased, replaced by a cold silence. It was the same silence I had felt for years. But this time, it was different. This silence said, "You are gone." And in that silence, I found clarity. Without their constant interference, my business flourished. The licensing deal with the analytics firm went through without a hitch. New customers signed up every week. Syncleap's user base tripled. Financially, I was more secure than ever, personally. I was finally free, but freedom came with its own cost. I missed family dinners where laughter used to fill the air. I missed birthdays and holidays. I missed moments I wished I could share with people who once mattered, but I realized something important. Family is not just about blood. It is about respect. It is about trust. And when those are gone, what remains is just a name. I chose to surround myself with people who valued me not because of what I could give, but because of who I was. The calls stopped, the threats faded, and slowly I rebuilt. One step at a time. During the most difficult weeks following the family fallout, it was Julia who became my anchor. She was more than just my business partner, she was the friend I had never expected to find in the middle of a storm. Julia called me one evening, when the weight of everything felt unbearable. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, the soft hum of the city outside the window. I had spent the day answering emails, attending meetings, and dodging the Emotional fallout that followed the breach with my family. The phone rang. Emma, Julia said warmly, her voice steady and calm. How are you holding up? I paused, then whispered, not well. She didn't rush me or try to fix things right away. Instead, she stayed quiet for a moment, letting me gather my thoughts. I am so sorry you have to go through this, she said softly, but you are not alone. Those words broke through the thick fog of doubt that had been creeping in. For years, I had felt isolated, burdened by expectations and disappointments. Julia's presence reminded me that I could still find support outside the family I thought I had. Over the next weeks, Julia was a constant. She came to my apartment with coffee and takeout dinners. She stayed late after meetings to help me review legal documents. She really listened without judgment or interruption. One night, we sat at my kitchen table, the glow of the city lights spilling through the windows. I told her everything, the house, the betrayal, the endless messages, and the silence that followed. You are stronger than you realize, Julia said. You have built something incredible from scratch. Your family may have tried to dim your light, but they cannot take away what you have earned. Her words were not empty compliments. They were truth. Julia reminded me of all the victories I had overlooked, the nights I stayed late coding, the presentations I nailed, the small but powerful moments of leadership. She helped me see that my worth was not tied to their approval. One afternoon, as I prepared for a major pitch to new investors, Julia pulled me aside. Emma, she said firmly, remember why you started this. It is not just about the technology or the money. It is about proving to yourself that you can create a life on your terms. You are not just surviving, you are leading. Her confidence gave me strength. I delivered the pitch with clarity and passion. Investors responded enthusiastically. Syncleap's future was secure, but more than that, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Julia was more than an ally. She was a reminder that family can be chosen, that support can come in many forms, that healing is possible even after betrayal. Months later, as the dust settled and my new life took shape, Julia and I celebrated. Quietly at my apartment. We toasted with sparkling water, laughing over inside jokes and plans for the future. You are not just my partner, I told her. You are my chosen family, she smiled. And you are never alone. In the hardest moments when the world felt cold and uncertain, Julia's support was a lifeline. She showed me that strength is not about standing alone, but about knowing when to lean on those who truly care. Through her, I learned that true family is built on respect, love, and unwavering belief, not obligation or bloodlines, and that lesson became the foundation for my new life. Several months had passed since I severed ties with my family. The dust had settled, the legal battles behind me, and the constant tension replaced by a calm I had not known for years. I had created a new life, one built on my own terms, my own rules, and most importantly, my own peace. My new apartment was small, but filled with light. Large windows opened to a view of the lake, where ducks floated lazily on the water's surface, and the trees whispered with every breeze. It was simple, quiet, and perfect. I had learned that peace was not about grandeur, but about feeling safe and unburdened. Syncleap thrived. The company's user base tripled. Investors were impressed, not just by our technology, but by our resilience. The challenges I had faced seemed to fuel my determination rather than diminish it. I was no longer the invisible daughter or the tech hobbyist. I was a leader, yet more than any professional success. What filled me with joy was the family I had chosen. Julia and a small group of close friends became my chosen family. People who saw me, supported me, and celebrated my successes without jealousy or judgment. We shared meals, laughed over bad movies, and supported each other through life's ups and downs. For the first time, I understood that family was about connection, not blood. One weekend, we organized a small picnic by the lake. The sun was warm and the air smelled like fresh grass and wildflowers. Julia brought homemade sandwiches, and Liam, my closest friend since college, played the guitar softly in the background. As I sat among them, I felt a deep sense of belonging, no expectations, no past resentments, just love and respect. I thought about how different my life had become. Once, I had craved approval from people who would never give it freely. I had bent myself to fit their mold, trying to be the daughter, the sister, the family's quiet supporter. Now I was free. I had boundaries, strength, and the courage to say no. The toxic patterns that once controlled my life were broken. In the quiet moments, I reflected on everything I had learned. I learned that strength does not come from enduring alone. It comes from knowing when to walk away. I learned that success means little without peace, and I learned that true family is built on respect. One evening, as I prepared dinner in my cozy kitchen, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my mother. Hope you are well. If you ever want to talk, I am here. I read it twice, then I deleted it, not out of anger, but because I had found something better. I had found myself. My life was no longer about proving my worth to those who refused to see it. It was about living authentically, surrounded by people who valued me for who I truly was. And in that, I found my quiet happiness. I looked out the window at the sunset, the sky painted in soft pinks and oranges. I was home, truly home, not because of a house or a name, but because of the peace I carried. Within. This was my new and quiet life, and it was everything. I sit here now in the quiet of my new home, the soft evening light filtering through the curtains. The air smells faintly of lavender, a scent I chose because it calms me. Around me are the books I love, the photographs I have taken, and the small plants I have nurtured. This space feels like mine finally, completely mine. It has been more than a year since the family conflict reached its breaking point. So much has changed. I have rebuilt my life, my business, and my sense of self. But what stands out most clearly is a truth I learned the hard way. My real fortune was never the money, the house, or even the success in tech. It was the self-respect I gained when I set boundaries and said, enough. For years I had believed that love meant sacrifice without question. I thought that family was bound by blood and duty alone. But I was wrong. Family is not defined by who shares your DNA. Family is defined by who respects your worth, who honors your dreams, who listens when you speak, and stands beside you when you stumble. When I finally walked away from those who made me feel small, I found something they could never give me. Freedom. Freedom to be myself. Freedom to build a life on my own terms. Freedom to surround myself with people who see me, truly see me, and love me anyway. I remember the first time I realized this. It was during a quiet morning coffee with Julia. We were talking about the past, the betrayals, the disappointments, the pain, and she said something I will never forget. Emma, you do not owe anyone your light. You owe it to yourself to shine. Those words settled deep inside me. I understood then that my greatest gift was the courage to choose myself, the courage to say no to those who would dim my light. For their own gain, the courage to walk away from toxic ties and embrace the people who lifted me up. And in that courage, I found my true fortune. It was not the house I lost or the money I invested. It was the respect I earned by standing firm. The peace I claimed by setting boundaries. The love I found by choosing a family that truly cared. Now, I want to share this with you, dear listener. If you feel small or unseen, if you are carrying the weight of others' expectations, if you doubt your worth because someone else fails to see it, remember this. You are more than their opinions, more than their judgments, more than the roles they try to put you in. You deserve respect. You deserve kindness. You deserve to be heard. And most of all, you deserve to live a life that feels true to you. The greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from anyone who makes you feel less than you are. That is a fortune they can never take from you. So, wherever you are listening, know this, you are not alone. Your story matters, and your light is worth shining. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story has touched your heart, please subscribe and share, because sometimes the greatest healing comes from knowing we are seen and that we are not alone. I am Emma, and this is my story. My real fortune, the one no one can ever take away.